Greetings, all you lovers of lore and legend, whether student, teacher, parent, teller of tales, mortuary mystics, or observers of obsequies.
Great Tales is a podcast about myths and legends from both inside and outside the Christian tradition, and we come to you live twice a month to talk about these great stories that Christians have been reading, passing on for centuries, and sometimes millennia.
Over this series of episodes, we've decided to call Hot Theban Summer, which started out as a joke that I made, but now we're just leading into it. We have been taking a deep dive into the Oedipus legends, first of all with a Middle English retelling of that legend, the tale of Sir Diggory, followed by close readings of the Theban plays of Sophocles.
And today we're going to finish? I don't know, we're not really done. It's still summer, it's still very hot, but we're going to finish at least the Sophocles set of this with the third, or is it the first? It is the first of Sophocles' 3 Theban plays, Antigone, or as it's pronounced in ancient Greek, because I can't help myself, Antigone.
Antigone. We're not going to try to say that the entire time today, but that is how you say it. So, don't worry, Hot Theban Summer is far from over. As Father said, it's still summer, it's still hot, it's still Theban. We are in our next episode. Sorry, I don't know where my Monster Truck Rally announcer herself just kind of came out there. Yes, that's right. Next week, we'll be taking a look at the 7 against Thebes and the related Theban, one of the most important epics you've never heard of.
Yes. Before we get to Antigone, though, number one, some of you are probably wondering, like, wait a minute, didn't you just have an episode last week?
And also, what day is it?
What day is this? Why is this? Is it Wednesday? Especially for those of you who are joining us live. The reason
it is Wednesday, not Thursday today.
The reason why we're doing an episode today rather than next week, Thursday, is because next week, Thursday, I have to travel. And so instead of either not having an episode at all or doing a pre-record, which we'd prefer not to do because we love to interact with folks live, we decided to just bump up the live show to tonight.
Yep.
So
Yep.
You're still going to get 2 episodes this month, but it will be the first week of August.
So what that means is you have to take this episode and you have to like put it in the fridge, or just really kind of ration yourself a little bit because this has to hold you over.
That's right.
Until August.
That's right. So before we dive in, though, I wanted to give a brief advertisement, as it were, for something that both Deacon Seraphim and I are participating in, and that is Doxamut. So Doxamut, for those of you who listened to the podcast we used to work on together, Amun Sul, the Orthodox Tolkien podcast, Doxamut is the Orthodox Tolkien Conference, and it's going to be happening right here in Emmaus, Pennsylvania, over Labor Day weekend, so August 29th through 31st, this year, 2025. And I'm speaking, Deacon Seraphim is speaking, Dr. Jenkins is speaking.
I am speaking twice.
You're speaking twice, that's right. And also Deacon Nicholas Kotar is speaking.
It'll be just, the 3 of us all together in one place with also Dr. Cyril Gary Jenkins. So the 4 of us all together in one place. That has never happened before.
It is a powerful, powerful thing. So get your tickets. You can go to eventbrite.com, and that's Bright spelled B-R-I-T-E. And we're going to drop also the link for this there in the chat so that you can get your tickets. I strongly suggest you get them now because we're trying to get good counts for all the supplies and everything that we need.
Right.
And all of that. So it's important to go ahead and get them now because it's only 6-7 weeks away, I think is what it is.
So please come. If you come, I can promise a couple of things. One, and I have not announced this anywhere else, so this is exclusive for the Great Tale listeners.
Ooh.
I will be giving at least one of my talks will be on the Old Saxon Haliand, which is a Germanic alliterative poem that is a gospel harmony, ultimately descended actually from a Syrian gospel harmony, which somehow made its way to Western Germany in the Middle Ages. Pretty fascinating story there. And I will also be debuting some passages of a translation of the Heliand, a new translation of the Heliand, which I am working on right now. I'm working on it a few lines a day, and I'm going to read you guys some passages. It'll be the first time anybody has heard these passages translated, at least in this translation. There's actually only maybe one full-length English translation of the Heliand, and I don't really care for it, and that is why I decided I'm going to do a new one myself. And so I'm quite excited about this, and I think it's kind of the perfect Venn diagram overlap of things that Tolkien loved and things that I love, which, okay, there's a lot of overlap there anyway. But just in terms of kind of my overall universal history project, that so much of my, kind of hate, it's weird to call it a career, but like so much of the podcasting and the writing that I do has been about for so many years now. So it's just like the perfect overlap of those things. So that'll be at least one of the talks that I do, and then I'll be reading some from it as well. And that'll be the first time anybody gets to hear any of it. So please come. And there are some other shenanigans in the works. I have some real fun ideas that I would like to do. And the nice thing about Doxamut is that it is it's a kind of a more intimate affair than some of the conferences that I typically do. And so what that means is we have the opportunity for the people who do come to like really spend a lot of time together and kind of hang out and, have a pint and sing a sad song or eat a tomato in a provocative way. I mean, these are all things that can be done. Provocative was the wrong word to use there, and I heard it when I said it, and I am sorry for that. I really meant eat a tomato in a way that will traumatize future generations. Yeah. So anyway, come to Doxamut, guys.
I am also planning to do something that has not been done publicly from my own word hoard, and that is I'm going to be giving a fuller presentation on my master's thesis, which is on divine council theology and Tolkien's Legendarium.
Nice.
So that's a good, strong intersection actually with this podcast, because there's a whole lot of, paganism that's going to be talked about.
Stories.
Yes, something like that.
I thought you were doing fish stories.
No. That's for another conference that you and I are both speaking at. So,
yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry. I've been in writing mode today. So
I think we're just going to be on tour together for a while.
I mean, you know what? Honestly, that would be super rad. That'd be super rad.
So yeah,
paperwork.
Come to Doxamut, folks. It's going to be a lovely time, as it has always been, and the other talks are going to be a lot of fun too. I know. So anyway, back to your regular scheduled programming. So Sophocles Antigone, which was the first of the Theban plays that he wrote in order of composition. So this is the first one that he actually penned, and it was produced probably around 442 BC. It profoundly enriches its narrative by drawing very heavily on the existing myths and the vibrant cultural and political context of ancient Greece. So this play, which is set against the backdrop of the city-state of Thebes, it explores fundamental conflicts that are deeply relevant to the original Athenian audience. I was about to say Athenian restaurant. I don't know why. Athenian chicken?
It's okay. I'm there. Let's do it. Let's go.
And
I saw somebody, by the way, tweeted today making fun of how Orthodox converts love Greek food.
Oh,
and I was like, what a profoundly stupid argument. You guys are really enjoying this ethnic cuisine that's related to your religion. Okay.
That's so incredibly good.
I mean, really, really failed to see why that's an own. But anyway, sorry, continue.
You love delicious stuff.
Yeah. Congratulations. You poor suckers with all your good food and music and culture and like I don't know, man. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Yes. So yeah, it's deeply relevant to the original Athenians who would have seen this play, but also relevant for us. Also relevant for us here and now. As I think, especially those of you who've been on this journey now with us for the last several weeks, weirdly interesting and profound and deep and relevant, isn't it all? I'm actually a little bit surprised. I mean, I've read all these plays before, but coming back to them and really focusing on them, it's been a moving experience for me. So some of the themes include questions of like divine law versus human law. So this is a big question for this play. Or, as one might say, to obey the gods rather than men. The loyalty that you owe your family or your tribe versus what you owe the state.
And the state as a separate idea from family and tribe, which...
Yeah.
Which is an idea that's really kind of just now developing at this particular point time in history. Yeah.
So there's a lot that happens between the previous play which we looked at, which was Oedipus at Colonus, and this one now, Antigone, right? So why don't you catch us up on exactly what happens in Thebes since Oedipus finally, rode off into the blazing sunset.
Rode off into the sunset, so to speak. Yeah. By the way, for people out there who are invested in and constantly reaching out to me about improving my recording setup, I just want you guys to see that although they are empty, behold, I have bookshelves.
And now you can be a smart YouTuber.
Bookshelves are new. So as soon as I get the books on said shelves, you guys will be able to know that I'm a smart person whose opinions you should listen to.
But right now, it's a kind of metaphor for something. I don't know.
But right now, it's a metaphor, Father Andrew, for oral tradition.
For
oral tradition.
Here in the Emmaus, it's all curtains.
As we all know, like forget about like AI or whatever. Just the act of writing things down is a corruption of the human memory.
There you go.
Yeah. So said Socrates.
Socrates Johnson.
Socrates. Yeah. All right. So when last we left our heroes, it's a pun because hero. And anyway, okay, never mind. Anyway, so although
much ado about nothing.
Yes. Although it was although Antigone is actually the first play written in the Theban trilogy, it is the one that happens the latest in sort of the internal timeline of the story. It's a little like, should you start reading the Chronicles of Narnia with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or with The Magician's Nephew? By the way, it's only ever The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's the only correct answer. It's the only correct answer.
Yes.
All right.
What is wrong with people?
Yeah, I don't know. You can also think of it like what's the correct watch order for Star Wars, which might be a little more controversial. I would still say, by the way, that you should start with A New Hope, because if you already know a bunch of things about the Jedi Order, et cetera, A New Hope is just not as good. Part of the real juice of that film is the fact that you know absolutely nothing about the world. It's actually a really fun exercise to try to figure out the rest of the Star Wars universe using only information found in A New Hope.
When I first saw that movie,
yes,
which was in 1977,
yes,
which is the year that it came out, there was no Episode 4. It was no A New Hope even. It was just Star Wars.
It was just Star Wars. Yes,
it was just Star Wars.
Yes, we know.
And then, I'm just saying.
I tried to start a drinking game for whenever a Gen Xer would mention that they're Gen X, but you'll die of alcohol poisoning like immediately in any given conversation. So I was just like, this morning I woke up, I was like, how many people will mention that they're Gen X on Twitter today? And
I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark when it first came out.
It was like 4 before 9 a.m. That's all I'm saying. All right, so yes. Well, when Antigone came out, back in my day, when Antigone came out, there was no Theban cycle. There was just Antigone, right?
That's right.
All right, so it's written first, but it happens last. Episode 3, No Hope. After Oedipus's life has already come crashing down around him, after he's ascended to daemonhood and passed from this life, after his sons have killed each other in this suicidal civil war, which I'm about to explain, for control of the city of Thebes, that's when this story picks up. So the events of the Theban Civil War itself will be covered more in the next episode or 2 of Hot Theban Summer. We'll just kind of see how much we can get in next time. But for now, I'll just summarize it thus. So the Theban Civil War centers on the conflict between Oedipus's 2 sons, Eteocles and Polynices. There's no good way to say these words in English, by the way. Like, you really have to like either
Polynices.
Yeah, right. You either have to actually just like say the Greek pronunciation, in which case it always sounds like a little pretentious, or you just have to lean into the fact that you're a stupid Anglo and just
Polynices.
You know, yeah, Polynices. Oh.
Eteocles.
Yeah. So after Oedipus was expelled from Thebes, he becomes a wandering beggar. Right, his two sons, and it's by the way, it's kind of hinted at in the later dramas, the later tragedies, which we've already covered in the series. That there's a period of like when his initial exile at the end of the Oedipus the king, but then maybe he kind of hangs around Thebes for actually a little bit longer. After that, he actually speaks to his action of blinding himself and expelling himself from the city. In Oedipus at Colonus, he speaks sort of like he did those things when he was rash, but then when he, kind of cooled down and kind of realized the implications of everything that's happened and what he's done, he wants to come back to his city because he loves his city. This is his home, and that his sons do not take him in, right? And that's why he's kind of got this axe to grind against them in that play. So after he's expelled from Thebes, becomes a wandering beggar, his two sons quarrel over their right to the throne. So initially they're willing to leave the throne to Creon because they acknowledge that there is this curse, there's this blight on their house. The two of them are themselves the product of incest, right? So even though that wasn't their fault, they're still tainted by it, right? But then we are told that a sinister twist of mind, or a fatal murderous rivalry, right? They become in the grip of a passion. That this grips them and it leads them to vie for power.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't Oedipus say basically that that a god has driven them to this?
Yeah. I mean, that's
Ares is the one he says that does it.
Yeah, I mean, I it's hard to remember the exact wording right now. But I mean, the thing is, like, if you're an ancient Greek, anytime two people are going to war with each other, it's Ares doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what he does. This is why Ares is sort of never good news unless you're the Romans. And the Romans were like
very martial.
Yeah, they were real martial, so to speak. Yeah.
Classical language puns are always on board on this.
Yes,
podcast.
But also like, stupidly easy since all of our words come from these people, but yeah, so boy, this is going to be hard to get through. It's been a long day, guys. It's been a long day. It's going to be hard to get through. So Eteocles prevails in the initial dispute, strips his elder brother Polynices of the throne, drives him from the homeland, and so then as an exile, Polynices flees to Argos, where he marries the daughter of a king named Adrastus and raises a powerful army. And this army consisted of 7 great kings, the 7 spearheads forged together, the 7 armies led by 7 champions known to legend and myth as the 7 against Thebes. And basically, this happens in the generation within the Argive culture. This happens in the generation before the Trojan War. So the story of 7 against Thebes, the story of the Theban, is actually the kind of the prologue to the Trojan War. If you think back to the episode that we did on the Iliad, in the epic cycle, this is one of the plays or one of the poems that would have actually come before the Iliad and the Odyssey.
So 7 against Thebes, which we're going to do next time.
Yes.
If I'm getting this correct now, chronologically actually comes in this period in between Oedipus at Colonus and Antigone.
Right.
But the play that we have is not by Sophocles.
No, it's by
we're doing it
by Aeschylus. But also there were a bunch of epics, most of which are lost to us, about this event, right? And again, like with the stories of Antigone and Oedipus and so on, Sophocles is not creating material. He's taking the stories that have kind of come out of the Bronze Age collapse.
Yeah.
And he's just doing his version of those, or his telling of those. And this is the same thing with the story of 7 against Thebes. I mean, there were a bunch of different versions of the story floating around only some of them have survived to us. What I want to do is I want to look at the play, but then I also want to look at some excerpts from a Latin epic by Statius, known as the Theban.
This is like how they keep making new sets of Spider-Man movies, right?
I mean, yeah, it's actually, I don't know if you were just saying that to trigger me or something, but it did not work.
No, it's true. No, it's true.
Yes,
I mean, there's a side of me that's like, man, can't they come up with anything new? But then there's another side of me that's like, Hollywood is kind of just doing what classical culture did. That doesn't mean it's successful. But the very fact of retelling the story is not.
I mean, for decades after the Second World War, the only movies that were doing well were World War II movies, and then like you have a run where it's just all, it's all superhero movies or whatever. Like things come in and out of vogue. But the reason that we retell them is because there is something about something that I think that superheroes have in common with classical heroes and villains, I think is that they're so strongly archetypical.
Yes, I think that Spider-Man is actually a good example of this.
First of all, he does whatever a spider can. I don't know if you know that about him.
I don't think that that's actually totally true, despite what the song says.
The poets may have erred.
But there's something. But like the Spider-Man story is a good example of this because it always starts right with the death of Uncle Ben as kind of this catalytical moment, right? And this propels him and alters his trajectory in life, and always is behind him somewhere, and he's always dealing with it. No matter which version of the story, you can't get.
Although in the newest one they kill Aunt May instead, but in any case, wow, gosh darn it, people. Gosh,
see that's so sometimes you can transgress, right?
That one just hurt me. No, it was so good though. I really enjoyed No Way Home. It's probably part of it was like just the throwing the bone to the millennials in the audience. See, now I have mentioned my generation because
but you're always telling me how you don't really feel like you're a millennial because all your friends are Gen Xers.
But one thing that I do have in common with normal millennials is that I grew up with a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Also, my toxic trait is trying to like casually convince people that it was actually Toby Mac, like the Christian rapper, instead of Tobey Maguire who starred in those movies. So people will be like, "Oh, I really like Spider-Man 2." I'm like, "Oh yeah, with Toby Mac," and they're like, "Yeah, wait, what? No, that's not. Is that right?" Anyway, yeah. So I also used to do a thing at work where I would try to convince people that various actors, anytime somebody would mention an actor, various actors had been in Ally McBeal. The only problem was that I've never seen that show, and so occasionally
I didn't think that.
Occasionally, I would hit on someone. Well, no, but occasionally I would hit on somebody like Robert Downey Jr., who apparently actually was in Ally McBeal. But the only reason that I know about that show, and this is how far off the beaten path we are now, guys, is that driving home from work, there used to be this, I think it was a car place, but they had the dancing baby image from Ally McBeal on a big, like a video billboard out front. And so like for years, I'm just passing the dancing baby on the way home from work every day. And eventually I'm like, what is this thing? And so I Google it, and it comes up with the Ally McBeal thing.
All right. Well, anyway, since you've mentioned that, I have to ask you though: have you ever heard that there's a band called Da Vinci's Notebook that did a song called Ally McBeal?
No.
Have you never heard that?
I don't know any bands.
Okay,
Father.
I will. All right, I will just mention that. I will just drop that right now for all of our listeners. But the song that everyone must listen to from Da Vinci's Notebook, since I'm on that now, is a song called Title of the Song.
That's pretty strong.
So,
That's pretty strong.
Yes, everyone needs to listen to the title of the song.
All right. So anyway, I was going somewhere with all of this, but it's all that to say, like the thing that superhero stories do have kind of in common. You think of Spider-Man, or you can also think of Batman. I mean, the Batman thing is even more strongly consistent. Every Batman story has to start with the pearls in the alleyway, and his parents getting shot, and like all these different things, right? Batman stories, Spider-Man stories, Superman stories. Part of the reason that we tell these stories over and over again is because they do tap into something that's really unique. that other countries don't have superhero stories, but superhero stories in places like Canada or the UK, they just tend to be sort of like government agents of some kind. But the superhero itself is kind of a uniquely American phenomena. And I think part of which doesn't mean, typically speaking, the more famous superhero stories that are written by people who aren't Americans are deconstructive stories, like Alan Moore or somebody like that. For the most part, superhero stories are kind of this uniquely American phenomena, and they speak to a need that we have to feel as though we have archetypes that ground us, right? National heroes, archetypes that ground us, and constantly kind of searching for a mythology that our country is really just too new to have in an organic way, right?
Yeah.
But it's the similar thing that's going on here at this particular point, in the life of the city-state of Athens, which is quite a new civilization at this point in time. Now it's old stuff, but it wasn't old then. So what they were doing is they were looking back to the things that had happened, the previous, the things that had happened kind of in the mythic time, but the stuff that happens, like the Seven against Thebes and the Trojan War, that stuff happens right at the transition point between myth and history, right? And so it's a liminal moment, and it is a moment when the boundaries around civilization, the boundaries around who belongs in a civilization, all these different things, that's when they're really tested, they're pushed to their limits. Some of the cities, some cities do not pass the test, and so they fail and experience the collapse, and others manage to kind of make it through. And so one of the things that all the Theban stories are about is this question of how does a city-state fail? Right, because the city is the only unit. Yeah, it's the only form of like nation at this particular time. Right, is this what nowadays we call a city-state, but for them it's just the cities, the polis.
Yeah. And I was going to say, there have been some empires, but an empire is not a country.
Yeah, right.
It's a powerful city-state that also went and conquered another city-state and made it bow.
Yes, and has those city-states now as, client kingdoms. Yeah. And that is the thing Athens is trying to do and maybe ultimately fails to do during the Peloponnesian War. All right, so that's the story of Seven against Thebes. Polynices gets this army of 7 champions together. He attacks the city of Thebes. And in Oedipus at Colonus, Oedipus, now a very old man, learns about his son's actions, how they, and most specifically, how they disregarded him. And he says, well, if you disregard your father, then you're not going to be able to found or perpetuate a civilization. It's the honor your father and mother so that you will live long in the land. And that is not honor your father and mother so that you personally will have a long lifetime. It's honor the traditions of your parents so that your identity as a civilization continues to cohere. Right, and so we see the flip side of this very, very obviously in that story, which is that since they've disregarded him, he pronounces his curse upon them, and basically says that their blazing, fated strife is going to result in them dying by each other's hands. And so he prophesies that Polynices will never conquer Thebes, but will fall red with your brother's blood, and he stained with yours equals twins in blood.
Cursey McCurse face there.
Yep. Which also means they each died at the hand of their uncle, and or nephew.
I know it gets so weird when you start because Antigone, right? Like think about it. Yep. So her mom is her mom, but her mom is also her grandmother through her dad.
Yeah,
and then her mom is also her aunt through her no.
So. It's like that country song. I am my own grandpa.
My own grandpa.
Yeah. Strongly recommend if you're not familiar with that song.
Awful.
Yeah. All right. So Polynices, despite Antigone's pleas to turn back and avoid their father's prophecies, he's resolute in his attack. The ensuing battle sees him leading his troops against Thebes. The attack is beaten off. Oedipus's prophetic curse is grimly fulfilled. Brother kills brother, and the attack against the 7 gates at the city. So you have 7 captains or 7 kings attacking 7 gates. Ultimately, it fails. So with both Eteocles and Polynices dead, Creon now assumes role of Thebes. And Creon is not...
last man standing.
Yeah, he's not quite the mustache-twirling villain in the background of all of these stories, but all the way back at Oedipus the king, you'll remember that Oedipus, one of his strong suspicions is that Creon has arranged all of this to seize the throne from Oedipus. And so I think there is always kind of the sense that he's always just ready. He's waiting for somebody to, waiting for things to fail, waiting for things to collapse. And then he's going to be the powerful, charismatic leader who kind of steps in. I think he would have done very well in like a Banana Republic kind of a situation.
Or like a post-Augustan Rome. Maybe.
Maybe a little bit, crisis of the 3rd century, maybe, or something like that. So, and so what he does, his first act as king, once he's finally assumed sole rule, all the other heirs to the throne are dead. His first act is to issue a decree that denies burial to the corpse of Polynices.
Yeah,
we're going to talk in a minute about why this is such a problem.
Yeah,
right?
I'll say this is the thing that makes this play go.
Yeah, so
if Creon did not put out this law, then we wouldn't have a play.
So this is going to be the opening scene, basically. So this, he forbids anyone to mourn him. He declares that his body must be left unburied, his corpse carrion for the birds and the dogs to tear, an obscenity for the citizens to behold. It's the equivalent of, in the Middle Ages, if you have a particularly unsuccessful revolutionary leader, they would hang him, above the city gates, right?
Yeah.
So that everybody could see, here's the consequence of what happens if you go against the king.
Well, and also, like, underneath this also, and this is never mentioned, I don't think this is ever mentioned in the play, but there is also the belief, you can see this, though, in Homer over and over again. There is also the belief that if you're not buried, then you can't go to the underworld. You're going to just wander around.
Yeah, you'll be sort of stuck in like the antechamber or the narthex of the underworld, basically.
Yeah, and so
it's not mentioned
in death. You depend on your relatives,
right,
to let you get to the underworld.
It's not mentioned in the play because it would not. It doesn't have to be. Everyone knows this. Everyone knows it works this way. Yeah. All right, so before we get into Antigone itself, I thought it might be useful now that we've established a bit of rapport with Sophocles, that it might be fun to actually introduce a little more technical terminology into our discussion of the play today. Ooh. So what I wanted to do was to very quickly introduce the different parts, the structural parts of Greek drama, as Sophocles uses them. And then as we're kind of talking through the play, we'll actually kind of tell you which part of the play that we're in at the time. All right. And this will also help you in your mind's eye actually imagine a little bit more how the play was staged, which I assume is going to get you very excited, Father Andrew.
I do love some good blocking.
I know you love some blocking.
There's a song, I'm trying to remember now. Is it by Cake? That's called Opera Singer.
It's impossible to know.
And it is possible to know, actually. And it talks about how an opera singer has to go and find a little piece of tape on the floor, which these are called spike marks in theater. And, he always has to go find that. That's the place that he has to stand. Yep. And, there's different colors of spike tape. And there's even glow tape. Glow tape, I tell you, which it glows in the dark. And that's what makes it really cool. But also... I'm not kidding about this because I did this back when I was a stagehand. At certain points in like intermission or whatever, because often the lights would be out for a long time, which makes the glow tape fade. A stagehand would have to run out, usually when the curtain was closed, with a flashlight and go up to the glow tape and recharge.
I've always wondered about things like that, actually, so that makes sense.
It's real. It's absolutely real.
All right, well, cast your mind back long before glow tape.
Yeah.
The first part of a Greek drama is called the parodos, from which is the ultimate source of our word for parody, although the two ideas are not related.
Yeah.
So don't commit an etymological fallacy here.
Parodos.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, etymologically, odos is way, parodos is sort of the way along. Alongside the way.
Well, in this case, I think it's like the singing along with odos in that sense, right? So you have This is the entrance passage in a Greek play, and it refers to both a space and a part of the play. So there is a space between the end of the stage, or the structure the stage is on, and the spectators' benches. Nowadays, this is typically what we call the orchestra, right? Which means a circular dancing floor, essentially. So this the
mosh pit.
Yeah, the mosh pit. So the parodos is I'm just going to pretend I've seen a mosh pit, know what one is. I'm a very normal youth.
I participated.
I know you did. I believe.
I mean, as a person of your size, I'm surprised you didn't. You're 6'4". Like, you would have done very, very well.
When would I have ever been to a place that had a mosh pit? In my life, when would that have happened?
Maybe some point we will have to cast off our cassocks, and I will take you to some dark location with a big concert or something like that going on, and we could go throw some elbows. Do you Seraphim? What do you think?
Yeah, somebody's gonna clip that, put that on OrthoWeb right there. So the orchestra is the place where the chorus comes out, and this is going to sound weird, everybody, but you have to actually imagine that as people are reciting lines in the play, they are also dancing.
Yeah. Very
is a musical, and the chorus in particular is always dancing when they sing. It's very difficult to imagine this with some of the lines. You're like, how would you dance to that exactly? But they did. So there's this circular dancing floor in front of the stage, and the parodos is the first song that the chorus sings as they enter, and they come into the orchestra, and they're sort of dancing around in a circle in front of the audience as they are singing the opening lines of the play. So the plays, although the plays that we have are quite short, it's an Orthodox podcast. Imagine Greek chant. And the way that things are stretched out a little bit.
Melismatic,
so to speak, in which nothing is said which is not sung. Yeah. So everything's kind of stretched out a little bit, and then look at some of these shorter lines that are really powerful and pack a lot of punch. But now imagine that takes those 3 or 4 lines could take 3 or 4 minutes to sing. Okay, and if you kind of imagine it this way, it'll actually hit a little bit different. So, I
was saying though that like think about it. Think about rock concerts or even music videos. No one stands there at the mic and just, I mean, maybe if it's a very somber song or something, whatever, they're standing there not moving. But almost no one stands there at the mic and doesn't move. Like there are singer gestures and stuff that are being done.
That's right.
To punctuate what's being sung. So I mean, it's just another form of that.
As a fellow youth, I have definitely seen a music video. So we'll just just pretend that I've seen a music video before.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yes, exactly. But no, that's exactly right. I mean, if something is being sung, anyway, this is not a stationary. And you can actually understand some of the dangers around theater. Side rant, just because we're so far off time now, we're gonna be doing 2 weeks on Antigone anyway, but the shortest play is gonna take us the longest time.
It's the shortest play.
Yeah. So side rant though, so was having a conversation on the Twitters today about astrology, which is what I'm going to be talking about at Lord of Spirits conference, by the way. What astrology in the ancient world actually was, what are the practices which were actually prescribed by the Church Fathers, and then what are the things that were actually considered astrology but were okay, which are now the basis of, we sometimes make a big difference now between like astrology and astronomy, and that terminology is basically modern. The words are used interchangeably for both good and evil in the ancient world. So I'm going to be talking about all of this, but one of the conclusions that one of my one of the people I was talking to, one of the conclusions they came to
you trying to throw out big fancy Latin words.
No, yep, just too tired to do it today. One of the conclusions that he came to was that because this is dangerous, or has been dangerous for some people, that we shouldn't even actually engage in practices like stargazing or looking at the sky in wonder. This is an Orthodox person is saying this, that we shouldn't look in the sky in wonder, and we should not use like symbolism. So you'll find even in the scriptures, like certain constellations will be used because they have symbolism attached to them, so they're used in a poetic way, which is in the scriptures. It's in the tradition, it's in lots of different interesting places. But because these things are sort of tainted, so the sky is really off limit. By the way, well, anyway, so that's sort of the argument, and I would just like to say that as strongly as St. John Chrysostom comes out against doing a horoscope, which, by the way, don't do your horoscope. Nobody's saying you should do that. As strongly as he comes out against the horoscope, he comes out twice as hard against sports and theater.
Nice.
So I would really, really, and then by extension, film, drama, any kind of like live storytelling, right? So the question to ask when you come across things like this is, well, when somebody condemns a practice, what did it look like in their time? What did it look like in their day? What about it was problematic that they felt like they needed to speak out against? Is it just the fact? Is it just the fact that if you attach a wagon to a horse and you ride around in a circle, is that an inherently sinful activity, or is there something else attached to chariot racing which you should not be doing, especially on the Lord's Day? Right? That's the question to ask. And in a similar way, when you're asking a question about, well, what's the issue with drama? Well, drama as it develops, so not even so much in Sophocles' day, but the way that it develops into the first, second, third, fourth century of the Christian era, is that so actors, as I think I mentioned, were originally conscripts. Basically, they would draw names out of a hat and be like, "Oh, you're Antigone today," or whatever.
Yes.
Which must have led to some very kind of mixed performances. I don't know, or everybody from that class of citizenship just had, singing, dance, as part of their education, the way that Plato describes. But later on in history, the actors become professionals, and the dance component of this becomes increasingly sensuous.
Yeah.
With the actors / dancers, also. So, for instance, if you read in Tacitus, you'll get this odd description of these rival troops of ballet dancers like fighting in the streets of Rome. That's the modern translation. It'll say like ballet dancers, and so then you're like, oh man, it's the Sharks and the Jets. Like, what's going on?
Well, I mean, I can tell you, having worked a lot of performances, with dance schools, and especially dance moms, who you are.
Listen, I had my girls in exactly 1 year of dance, and I was like, nope, we're not, we're out of here.
I'm not anti that, but I do have some battle scars that I could show you.
Listen, there's a whole culture around it that kind of wigs me out. But in any case, the thing to understand is that these were not like these are just not moral people. This is bad company to keep, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's like,
there is a
it's
dance.
like the difference between. See, I'm going to throw one out for all the millennials now.
All right, thank you.
It's like the difference between early Taylor Swift.
Yep. Nope. Sorry.
And Christina Aguilera.
No, just missed me again. Missed me completely with that one. I hated Taylor Swift when she started.
Back when she was still a little country.
Yes.
She's from Reading. Well, she's from Wyomissing, actually, which is a suburb of Reading, Pennsylvania.
All right, we got to get through this. All right, so the next part of the play, and this is kind of one of the more important parts, is what is called the stasimon. The word, as you would kind of take away from it, means stationary. It refers to a choral song that is sung by the chorus once it has reached the orchestra, where it typically, so they dance out to the orchestra and then they stand there for the duration of the play. So this is a song that is sung not standing still, but while dancing in formation.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they're doing a little can or what's up. And the stasimon come at the end of each one. There's one that comes at the end of each scene, and they're really important to pay attention to because they basically have significant thematic importance. They draw in together the various things that have been happening in the scene. Sometimes because remember that the chorus is also kind of a character in the story.
Yeah.
That they're often, there's a little bit of irony in them, so they'll be singing something about one character that actually applies to another character in the scene that you've just seen, right? So you have to pay a little bit of attention to them. So an example here would be the first stasimon in Antigone, which is a hymn to human inventiveness and resourcefulness, which applies in different ways to both Antigone and to Creon. Other examples of this. So we're going to point those out basically for each one of the scenes as we go.
I'm pretty sure this is going to end up being a two-parter. I'm just putting that out there.
I said that I'm like, at this point it's done. It's just, that's what's going to happen. Because I really want to give this its due. And again,
it's worth this background information.
This is also what happens when you let me do the script.
True.
It just always happens. Happens. So, brevity is the soul of wit. You're a much wittier man than I am. All right. So
I read as an undergrad.
Yeah. So the next part is the komos. The komos, which is a lyric dialogue, which is usually sung between the actor and the chorus. Yeah, komos. Thank you. Which emphasizes heightened emotion and dramatic tension. So these exchanges, and there's a really famous one, which we will get to here in Antigone, they contrast with the sort of the regular spoken verse, although even then the spoken verse is kind of chanted, is kind of sing-songy, but then when you get to the komos, it's this really drawn out, heightened emotion, dramatic tension, as these lines are being sung back and forth between one of the actors and the chorus. So it's usually used for really intense emotional moments.
Like these are the bits that go into the
self-accusation.
This is the bits that go into the trailer.
Yes,
and they're always exactly playing, right. and they're singing "O Fortuna" in the background because you have to do every single trailer. Dun 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 boom boom dun dun dun. "O Fortuna,"
Yep.
Okay, let's call the whole thing Orff. Just take your time with that one. It's okay.
In a world where your uncle / cousin / half brother is the king of Thebes. All right, and then finally there's the Exodus, which does what it says on the label. It's the final scene. It's the conclusion of the play. It's which is a short choral speech, as in the chorus is speaking, which usually ends a Sophoclean play, but actually they are singing it as they literally sort of play themselves out. And so it's usually the characters are all exiting the stage at the end of the play, as part of the Exodus. So like Antigone and Ismene exiting towards Thebes, and Theseus at the and the chorus exiting towards Athens at the conclusion of Oedipus and Polynices, and so on. So I mean, again, the word is Exodus. It just literally means the way out. So that's O Fortuna. Yeah. Shit. All right. So
I mean, yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of the structure then of Greek drama. And I think so what we'll try to do as we go through each scene is I will point out, or you'll point out, this is the stasimon of, in other words, here's the thing that we need to listen to, because the chorus is actually telling us something which, even if it's not in a even if the correlation is like not totally obvious, has something to do with the story. So, or it has something to do with the scene that just happened. All right, so this being said, this story, unlike some of Sophocles' plays, this one has a prologue. So it's the prologue. It's actually before the chorus comes in, and you just have two actors on the stage, Ismene and Antigone. So, do you want to be Ismene or Antigone?
Yeah, I talk a lot. I'll be the other sister. I'm happy to be Ismene. You can.
Okay, all right. Well, go ahead and start out.
What's the matter? Trouble, clearly. You sound so dark, so grim.
Why not? Our own brother's burial. Hasn't Creon graced one with all the rights, disgraced the other? Eteocles, they say, has been given full military honors. Rightly so. Creon has laid him in the earth, and he goes with glory down among the dead. But the body of Polynices, who died miserably, why, a city-wide proclamation, rumor has it, forbids anyone to bury him, even mourn him. He's to be left unwept, unburied, a lovely treasure for birds that scan the field and feast to their heart's content. Such, I hear, is the martial law our good Creon lays down for you and for me. Yes, me. I tell you. And he's coming here to alert the uninformed in no uncertain terms, and he won't treat the matter lightly. Whoever disobeys in the least will die. His doom is sealed, stoning to death inside the city walls. There you have it. You'll soon show what you are, worth your breeding, Ismene, or a coward, for all your royal blood. And then at this point, the sisters have an argument, basically whether or not they should get involved. And Ismene basically says, look, I'm a woman. I don't even know if I can dig a hole. And it's not for women to go against what the men in our lives say. And she basically just kind of makes this argument, which does not impress Antigone, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
And eventually Antigone says, I won't insist. No, even if you should have a change of heart, I never welcome you in the labor. Not with me. Antigone is a very sort of all or nothing kind of a person. So, do as you like. Whatever suits you best. I will bury him myself. And even if I die in the act, that death will be a glory. Which is the whole play right there. I will lie with the one I love, and loved by him, an outrage sacred to the gods. I have longer to please the dead than please the living here. In the kingdom down below, I'll lie forever. Do as you like. Dishonor the laws the gods hold in honor.
Yeah, well, I mean, like on the one hand, of course, Antigone is she is the hero of the play, hero in our modern sense. But like Ismene is not, she's not just full of it. You know, the king, he's a divine figure. He's in his position because the gods have put him there. And frankly, he's kind of the only guy that's a major player at all this stuff who isn't polluted by all of the awfulness of the Oedipal family. You know, I mean, he's the brother of Jocasta, but he hasn't done any of this stuff. And you know, he's not the result of any of this stuff. So like, it's not that Ismene, she has a point. Like, okay, so that's one of the reasons why this is a dilemma. You know, the king, the country, the state versus these kind of really primal, you know, what in Narnia, right, they would call the deep magic. Mm-hmm. I think bury the dead is part of the deep magic of this play. But it's not an obvious choice, and it's not nothing to not want to die for the act. I mean, think about it. Like, okay, you go there and try to bury Polynices. Are you going to even succeed? You know, will you give your life for nothing?
Right, yeah. So,
you know, I know that Antigone is calling her a coward and everything right here, but since I did get to read that line, I at least want to take her side for a moment.
Yeah. So one of the ideas here is that there are laws of the state, but then that there is also, you could say, like kind of an unwritten law. And when we say unwritten, we really mean unwritten. There's no Torah for the ancient Greeks.
Yeah, they don't have a Bible.
Yeah, they don't have a Bible. They don't have the Torah. You know, they don't have any. You know, it seems like maybe some pagans in kind of late stage paganism tried to make something out of the Orphic texts that would be a little more like. You know, like here's actually like a text for our religion. You know,
oh yeah, it's like some of these modern comparative religious, especially like early and mid 20th century comparative religion scholars. They're like, okay, well, every religion has its own scripture and whatever. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, lots of them don't. Lots of them.
Most don't.
Yeah, and so there's this idea of kind of unwritten law, and the unwritten law includes these very carefully guarded social taboos, some of which you've already talked about in this series, which, as I think I mentioned last episode...
Don't kill your dad. Don't sleep with your mom.
Yes, don't do those things. I think, as I mentioned last episode, these social taboos are the they are the things that if you break them, your civilization will collapse. So they're taboos against incest, but they're also taboos against patricide and fratricide. They're also taboos against dishonoring your parents. There are also taboos against things like the violation of the guest-host relationship. And the Greeks do have a series of myths which sort of explain the origins for some of these different things. But for many of them, there's not like an origin story. It's just sort of like, this is something everybody knows. Yeah. So the guest-host relationship, the enforcer of the guest-host relationship is Zeus himself.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the idea is that there's actually kind of an interesting kind of folk etymology people try to work out around, Zeus and like having to do with this idea that he is the one who protects suppliants. Because the idea is that if somebody throws aside their weapons, or somebody comes to you and they're in a place of total helplessness, and they present themselves to you in this state of total helplessness, that it is incumbent upon you to answer their request, to take care of them, even if they're your worst enemy in the world.
This is kind of wild if you consider the way that, like, especially early sort of tribal paganism works. Mercy, maybe for your family or whatever, you take care of your family because you need them. But for the stranger, so it's an interesting thing that the ancient Greeks adopted, this idea of hospitality, and even it's funny, like there's a whole
it's real bright.
There's a whole slate of words in English that are related to these concepts, like hospital, hospitality, host, hospital. Hotel, hostel, as in I stated, a youth hostel, and guest, but also hostile, and host, as in armies, because it's all a question. All of these words have to do with what do you do with strangers, right? You can either take them in and treat them well, or you can fight them, right? It's all. This is all what these questions of what you do with strangers.
Sorry, I just realized half of the lights weren't on, and the sun is going down, and that's why my face is getting darker and darker. All right, so
see, this is only for the YouTube viewers,
turn off
that this whole element of the podcast comes out.
That's much better. That's much better. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So I mean, what's interesting is that Christians in their apologetics against paganism will actually use these very taboos as kind of proof against the pagan religion, because they will say, listen, you all agree that violating these kinds of relationships is the worst thing that you can possibly do, but in your own myths, stories, legends, and songs, your own gods violate these same taboos.
Yeah, well, and this is one of the reasons why this is part of why they approach divinity the way that they do. Divinity is fundamentally scary. It's fundamentally dangerous.
To be avoided, in the sense that the best thing you can do is kind of avoid attention.
Right, and I think our culture is so deeply influenced by Christianity that it's hard to imagine how this could be. Like, how can that possibly work, right? But we actually have a very good parallel, right? And this idea of those who are supposed to be ruling and keeping the order, and yet they are terrible and do not follow it. And we simply call that
like this
government. Like, this is how you feel about the government. The government is supposed to be keeping things in order,
right? And
yet look at all of the hypocrisy and the corruption that we see. I mean, not just American, every government,
picking government.
Yeah, but and so therefore, that's part of why we have this sense that government is dangerous.
Yeah,
it's dangerous. It's because it's it's theoretically there to enforce certain rules that it's not going to follow itself.
I mean, my dear, loving, sweet wife, whom you have met, had to go down to the Social Security office to deal with some sort of paperwork things today for one of the kids. And it was the most, like, this is appointment 2. Still couldn't get the issue resolved. We have to go back for appointment 3 now. And she, I mean, like, you know, my wife, who is a very long-suffering person, like, she was starting to feel, like, pretty frustrated. I mean,
she's married to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, what more do you need to know, right? but the thing is that you know, she was starting to get really frustrated, and I was like, listen, this is why people have a perception that the government is like this, that the government is
because
malicious,
the government
or it's like none of the people that you were dealing with today at the Social Security office are probably actually malicious people, but the system has not been made to help you. The system has been made to kind of satisfy certain regulatory requirements, and so what you are doing, what we are in the process of doing, it's actually the government's a really good analogy, especially bureaucracy, because what we're in the process of doing is trying to propitiate the gods of this particular bureaucratic system. And so it's like, oh no, you didn't bring the right form this time.
Yeah.
Oh, we need 2 forms of ID, but not the 2 that you brought this
ritual
time. Right?
Precision.
And so it's like, and so you have to have this ritual precision that if you have it, you can satisfy the gods of the bureaucracy, and then they will turn their eye away from you and put it on somebody else.
Yeah.
So the thing that you have to understand about the ancient world is that if you wanted to do something like in the city of Rome, like build an addition onto your house, you still had to go through a permitting process, but instead of like going down to City Hall to get something stamped, you had to go down to whatever god ruled over the lane that you lived in, and you had to go down to his or her little shrine at the end of the street and to whatever priest or priestess was tending it, and you had to make an offering and basically get a blessing from that person to make the addition to your house. And so Christianity did not disenchant the world, okay? But what it did do was to free people from this kind of pagan bureaucracy. We're a little bit off the beaten path here now, talking about Antigone, but is all of this to say, the gods are typically not people that you are devoted to in the ancient world. Now, there are exceptions to this. There are people that Athena just really, really likes, right? Or people that apparently really, really like Hades and Persephone, as we're going to see in this play, right? So there are people who are like, you know, a little different or a little weird, but the idea, generally speaking, is that this is not something. It's not a relationship that you or I could have. This is a relationship that heroes have.
Yeah, the idea that, like for instance, the very common language that you hear, particularly in evangelical Christianity, of having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Right.
No one has a personal relationship with Zeus who probably isn't being raped by him.
Yeah, I mean,
frankly,
somebody like Odysseus seems to have like a personal relationship with Athena, or
yes.
like Diomedes, or like one of her champions.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that, but again, they have that relationship because they're important people, slaves, commoners. Yeah. They don't have that kind of relationship.
That's right. And all of this is what lies behind this conflict that's opens up now at the beginning with this argument between Antigone and Ismene.
Right.
You know, what do the gods expect? Now, Antigone, of course, what is her motivation? She does mention, right, this sort of, as I call it, the deep magic. She does mention that, but knowing Antigone as we do from the prequels, right, that were written.
Yeah, when they introduced the midi-chlorians in Oedipus at Colonus, I was like a little, okay, so he's just got a bunch of midi-chlorians and so he's a demon now? Like, come on, guys. Come on.
But,
come on.
But we also know that Antigone loves her brothers.
Right.
Because they're her brothers.
Right.
Just like she loved her father because he was her father.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, she's genuinely a good person in that sense.
So this is where, after ragging on the excesses of ancient paganism, I want to kind of shift to kind of bring up what's going on with Antigone here, because the thing that Antigone wants to do is a fundamentally proper thing to do.
Yeah.
And it is definitely not the case that Christianity believes that it doesn't matter how you treat your loved ones' bodies after their death, or
right,
or that you should not. That it doesn't really matter if you give them a funeral or mourn them or pray for them. And the fact that so many of us grew up in versions of Christianity where that's basically an afterthought, makes us worse at being human than the ancient pagans. Like in one of the most important measures of being human, which is how do you care for your dead?
Yeah.
This is a massive civilizational failure on our part. And there are a lot of things that people do not necessarily connect that are downstream of this. So what is Antigone doing? Well, Antigone has what the ancient Romans would have called piety. Greeks had another word for it, but piety is the word that came into English.
Ephsivia, right? Isn't it what it is in Greek? Ephsivia.
Yeah, ephsivia, or like philotema is sometimes also related to this.
Yeah,
that's the love. That, I mean, that's the quality that, for instance, St. John Chrysostom says that Joseph has, which is why Joseph conducts himself the way he does.
I mean, St. Paisios, modern saint, he talks about philotimo a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, so it's this idea that there's a proper way to relate to the gods, a proper way to relate to your family, and that if you're able to relate in this proper way, which is usually exemplified through acts of preservation, it means that young people have to take care of their parents when they're old, right? That's one of the main ways that this is expressed. If you do this, then the tribe coheres. Your family stays together, right? So part of what she's trying to do from a profoundly, definitionally impious family, Antigone is the person who cares about piety. She's the one who cares about what the gods actually ask of her, and what the bonds of duty and love require for her to be a member of her family. Yeah. And for Antigone, that identity is more important than staying alive. So we have Creon's decree, which Antigone informs Ismene of, which is that Eteocles, who's died defending Thebes, he's been given a hero's burial. Polynices, who attacked the city with a foreign army, is explicitly forbidden burial. His corpse is to be left not just unburied, but also unwept. So no one's going to weep for him. Nobody's going to mourn him. So many things I want to say about this. I mean, okay. I'm just gonna pass on. We don't even mourn. I mean, in our culture now, like I've been to a lot of funerals where there was no actual lamentation, and it wasn't just that there was no lamentation; it's that there was no space to mourn.
A number of years ago, boy, this must have been 15 years ago, maybe. I was one of the priests that served at a funeral for another priest, and multiple priests, and the bishop came.
Yeah.
This other priest who had died was just like in his early 50s. He got cancer and died, and I think he was of Syrian background, and so they did his funeral at a parish near ours here in the Lehigh Valley. And so he was married. He had daughters. His daughters were young adults, as I recall, maybe teenagers, but I think young adults. And every so often during the service, they would start wailing. And by that, I don't mean that they were like crying. I mean wailing, like so loudly that you could not hear the clergy, you could not hear the chanters, right? And now they didn't do this, but I have heard of funerals of Middle Eastern people where relatives will sometimes like in the middle of the service, they will go to the coffin and like pick up the body and embrace, and even some like climbing in, like all kinds of stuff, which is unthinkable, you know, to good Anglo-Saxon type people, where you stand back and just quietly, you know, keep it all in. But I remember that, and I mean, I've been in several circumstances, because, you know, I serve in not just an archdiocese that has a lot of Middle Eastern people, but in the area that I live right now, there's many Middle Eastern people, especially Syrians.
Yeah.
And I remember, even though I had met the man a few times. I had met this priest a few times. I don't remember if I'd ever met his wife or kids. But even though I didn't know them, it was hard not to just like feel it, like your heart was being grabbed by this wailing and pulled out of your chest, you know? And you can see why there's references in the New Testament to people being hired to mourn.
Right.
And it's not because the family is faking it or anything like that. It's just a sense of like, this is proper. This is good. Right. This helps. Like, it's funny. We do have a parallel in our pop culture, which comes from Star Trek, and not original.
A reference series. I will understand.
Okay, not original series, but I recall there was I can't remember who it was now, but amongst the Klingons, they have this custom where if a Klingon dies, when he dies, you know, ideally he's surrounded by his fellow Klingons, and they all, like, you know, look up and roar.
Yeah.
Right? Which they will explain as being like warning Sto-Vo-Kor. Yeah, they're warning Sto-Vo-Kor that a Klingon warrior is coming. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But it's a similar kind of thing. You know, that there's a wailing that should occur. Not that I'm saying, you know, if you're not being overtly emotionally demonstrative, then you're not properly mourning your dead. But there's I don't know, there's something about it, I think, that's very powerful.
Can I say that? I mean, this is something I genuinely struggle with being angry about. That there are characters in Star Trek who get more catharsis and release at the funeral of a loved one than I have at the death of any of my relatives. Like, this is genuinely something I'm really actively kind of frustrated and angry about, and the way that the whole sort of end of life thing is handled. There are a lot of things about my upbringing that I'm profoundly grateful for. This is something that really, really, it's still a wound that I carry, you know. Yeah. With you know, some of my relatives, you know, as they're lying on their deathbed, you know, when we should be gathering around as a family.
Yeah.
Like, and praying, like, people saying it doesn't really matter if you're there, because that's just her skin, that's just her skin suit. Father Andrew, that's the phrase. It's just her skin suit. She's already gone. Like, that is just, I mean, that is something I still really struggle with anger about, because
I mean, this play hits me hard, actually, because as a priest, I've dealt with the dead and dead bodies in particular a lot of times now. I've been a priest. This October I'll be a priest 19 years. And one of the things that priests do that probably a lot of people don't know is that when another priest dies, you know, we don't just serve the funeral, but the tradition is that the body is prepared for his burial by the other clergy. So it's not a funeral home or whatever that does it. So I've actually helped to vest, because we're putting them in their vestments. So when you put the vestments on a priest's body, you're saying the prayers that he would have said in life. And I've done this several times now, and it is a profoundly moving experience. And I actually had the opportunity to do it one time and I'm not kidding about this. I participated in that, and also in the funeral services and the burial for a priest that I am certain is a saint. Like, I'm not saying, he was such a good man. No. There are multiple stories, miracle stories. This man actually brought someone back from the dead at one point, And when he brought this woman back from the dead through his prayers, he said, look, God has brought you back from the dead to give you a chance to repent. So you're not going to have a long time to do that. So you better, go ahead and repent. And then she died like just a few months later or whatever again. And that was over. So like, that's what I'm saying when I say that he's a saint. And actually, I'll just mention this because I feel like he should be venerated. Not that I'm saying you should make icons of him or whatever, but if you happen to be in Eastern Pennsylvania, I know this isn't too far off because we're talking about death and burial.
No, this is actually super on topic.
Yeah. I think so. If you're ever in Eastern Pennsylvania and you're near Whitehaven, Pennsylvania, there is a monastery there called Holy Protection, Ayaskepi, and not in the normal cemetery, but next to the chapel of St. Paraskevi, there's the grave of higher monk Nicodemus, who prior to his tonsure as a monk, because he was a married priest, and then when his wife died, he was tonsured as a monk. But it was near the end of his life. He only had a few years left at that point. He took the name Nicodemus, but before that, he was Father Nicholas Kosis. And he had clairvoyance, and like I said, he brought someone back from the dead. He himself was brought back almost from the dead by God as a conversion experience. And so I'm just, I don't think that people should campaign for canonization, but I do think it's good to venerate holy people, whether they're ever canonized or not. That's up to God and, the bishops and stuff. But if you find yourself in Eastern Pennsylvania, I do recommend you stop by Holy Protection Monastery, go behind the chapel of St. Paraskevi, which is this beautiful stone chapel made out of purple stone, and go say some prayers at his grave. And while you're in Eastern Pennsylvania, of course, head on up to St. Tikhon's and pray at the tomb of St. Alexis.
Definitely do that, guys. Yeah, it's not.
But yeah, there's so like I think it's important to mention all this because we live in this time, as you said, where dead bodies are just treated so badly, that in our time and place. And so I think we have to get back more of this sense of the holiness of the body. And I think that applies even in this pagan context we're discussing. Now, obviously, I don't mean holiness as in the presence of Christ or whatever, but holy means to be set apart.
Yes.
Set apart. The previous play was all about the holiness of the body of Oedipus.
Right.
In this sense. And all that Antigone really wants to do, she's obviously not treating Polynices like Oedipus, but it's just a difference of degree, not of kind.
Yeah. All she wants to do is what is required of her. This is her brother, and therefore this is and therefore she's the only person who's going to do what needs to be done. And this is another thing I want to point out as we're talking about funerals, is that there is why is it your brother clergy who come and prepare your body? Because that's the job of the family. It is the job of the family of the person who has died to prepare their body for burial, to see that they are properly mourned, and so on. One of the worst things that can happen to you is that your line comes to an end, so that there is no one left to mourn you, there's no one to pray for you, there's no one to bury your body. And what the church does, which was totally radical in the context of the first century, was to come along and say, hey, we're from different places, we're from different nations, we're from different families, we're from different social classes, but because we are brothers and sisters, when one of our number dies, we will prepare their body for burial. We will mourn them. We will pray for them. And it's not just this thing that's down to just your blood relatives. And, because of the brotherhood that exists among in the priesthood and in the clergy of the church, right? That's why it's your brother priests who come and even invest
one of the things that led to many conversions to Christianity in the early centuries of the church is that Christians would go and take care of pagan plague victims. They would take care of the people who were sick and bury them, even while all the pagans were standing there having big Antigone feelings, but then I don't want to die of Black Death or whatever. And Christians would go in and sometimes actually then Christians who took care of the sick and the dead would then get their disease and then die themselves. And actually Eusebius at one point says, a guy whose name means, duty or piety or whatever. It's semi-heretic that he was, whatever. But Eusebius says in his history,
who among us has not been a semi-heretic at some point in his life?
True. He says in his history this was regarded as being, he calls it the equal of martyrdom.
Yes.
That people who gave their lives taking care of the sick and the dead were regarded as equal to martyrs. Right? So I think that part of what this play and this theme that runs through these Oedipus plays, particularly the previous one and then this one, does for us is it helps us to regain a more human sense of what the connection between human beings is.
Yeah, that thing that Chesterton said, something along the lines of, before we can become good Christians, we have to learn to become good pagans again. This is the sort of thing that he has in mind.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, this is the sort of thing that he has in mind. What he has in mind is there's there's this. I mean, there's all the terrible things about ancient paganism that we've talked about on this show and other shows and ad nauseum, etc. But the thing that Antigone is doing here, this is a profoundly good, right thing to do. Now, you sort of look at the bravado that she goes about it with, which we'd say maybe that's not actually particularly Christian, but it is a virtue in her society.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, she
is although maybe not a particularly feminine virtue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she's the good guy in this play.
Yeah.
And so, we have to give paganism its due here.
Yeah.
She's doing stuff that now, I mean, if we were going to, a patristic analysis of this would be to say, you see how God was preparing the Greeks to receive Christ.
Yeah. If we're going to be like St. Basil, we're going to trace the outline of virtue. Here it is.
Yeah.
The thing to do is to sort of, the challenge I would put out there for somebody listening to this would be to say, imagine your loved one dies and imagine there's a plague going on in which you are not allowed to see, touch, handle their body. How would you handle that?
Yeah.
Actually, not a super unrealistic scenario, as it turns out. Okay, so this brings us, I do want to mention just kind of the key passage here, which I've tried to do for each one of these scenes in our notes, is the key line in Antigone's little proclamation here. She says, "I'll have longer to please the dead than please the living here." Now, this is obviously, it's a prophecy of what's going to happen in the play, because she's basically said, I'll do this even if I die. Obviously, she's going to die. But this is also just generally true. It's a good way to live your life. You will be dead longer than you will be alive. That is true for, as far as we know, for everyone listening to this podcast. So prepare for your death, right? Prepare for your death. And so Antigone says, I have longer to please the dead than to please the living here. In the kingdom down below, I'll lie forever. Do as you like. Dishonor the laws the gods hold in honor.
Which is a little ironic. Again, the gods hold them in honor, kind of, sort of.
Well, the laws are what the gods hold in honor.
Yeah.
Remember that Oedipus is buried with the Furies, right? At their holy site, right? It's the whole job of the Furies is to basically enforce when you break these kinds of laws. Yeah, and it seems to be something like, these are the laws which are fundamentally, you could say, like, against the fabric of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there are,
so they're not, it's not even like moral in the sense of, we have this idea of right and wrong, and that's not what this is. This is like more fundamental than that.
It's moral frankly, in the Levitical sense.
Yeah.
Where if you do certain things,
it's like descriptive. It's ontological.
If you do certain things, the land will vomit you out, is one of the things that God says to Israel. And I mean, it's notable that, I mean, our idea of what God is so fundamentally influenced by Christianity that the idea that the gods, including Zeus himself, the most high god of the Greek pantheon, that he's actually subject to something, that he could have problems.
Yes.
Right. He could have that's hard for us to understand, but that's because we think that, God is this way. Right. Now Zeus gets away with a lot, but he doesn't get away with everything.
No, not everything.
he can be held to account. And this, frankly, is one of the big apologetics for Christianity against paganism is our God is not accountable to anyone or anything. He's the one who made everything. He's the ruler of everything.
He's not constrained. Constrained.
He's completely unconstrained, whereas Zeus, even Zeus is constrained in one way or another. I wanted to also highlight, there's interesting, like there's all kinds of weird ironies in some of this stuff where it's like, ooh, that's dark. Oh, but it's great. Like Antigone at one point, she says, speaking of Polynices, I will lie with the one I love and loved by him, an outrage sacred to the gods.
Yeah, I noticed that line.
She doesn't mean anything incestuous by that.
But surely people would pick up on the...
Right. So it's
but it's also like... But it's also this...
She is an Oedipin? I don't know.
Oedipal, Oedipian... Yeah. I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that the key line there is an outrage sacred to the gods. The idea is that there was this other outrage that was outrageous to the gods, and it's almost like by being the one who keeps piety, she's ending her family curse.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, at this point, gentle listener, as you are sitting at the great stadium there at Athens, in the midst of the Dionysia, the chorus enters, chanting and dancing as they make their way to that orchestra, and Father Andrew now is going to read the parodos.
And I have to point out that it is absolutely appropriate that I do this because I'm going to reveal this to the world now, a lifetime member of the International Thespian Society.
I thought you were going to just say it's because you're an elder.
There's that too.
And literally in this case, you are a presbyter. This is the presbyter. This is the old citizens of the city of Thebes.
No, I am. So. Yeah. When I was in high school, somehow I earned lifetime membership of the National Thespian Society. They don't even send me a newsletter or anything. So I don't know if I'm even in some database, but I did have a card at one point. I don't know.
If you had been born in Texas, you would be retroactively, automatically, by the grace of God and by his will, a lifetime member of the NRA. So consider that. By the way, Harry Garris, by the way, in the chat, Harry Garris just said, God has the unique property of being unsubscribed. And I was like, that's actually the coolest way I've ever heard anybody describe that. And then he fixed it to uncircumscribed. But actually, just like, yes, God is unsubscribed. You know, he's not contingent. Okay, all right. So
unsubscribe.
Yes. No,
right.
I liked it.
Enter a chorus. Right. The old citizens of Thebes, chanting as the sun begins to rise. Glory! Great beam of the sun, brightest of all that ever rose, on the 7 gates of Thebes, you burn through night at last. Great eye of the golden day, mounting the Dirce's banks, you throw him back, the enemy out of Argos. The white shield, the man of bronze. He's flying headlong now, the bridle of fate stampeding him with pain. And he had driven against our borders, launched by the warring claims of Polynices. Like an eagle, screaming, winging havoc over the land, wings of armor shielded, white as snow, a huge army massing, crested helmets, bristling for assault. He hovered above our roofs, his vast maw gaping, closing down around our 7 gates, his spears thirsting for the kill, but now he's gone, look. Before he could glut his jaws with Theban blood, or the god of fire put our crown of towers to the torch, he grappled the dragon none can master, Thebes. The clang of our arms like thunder at his back. Zeus hates with a vengeance all bravado, the mighty boasts of men. He watched them coming on in a rising flood, the pride of their golden armor ringing shrill, and brandishing his lightning, blasted the fighter just at the goal, rushing to shout his triumph from our walls. But now for victory! Glorious in the morning, joy in her eyes to meet our joy, she is winging down to Thebes, our fleets of chariots wheeling in her wake. Now let us win oblivion from the wars, thronging the temples of the gods and singing, dancing choirs through the night. Lord Dionysius, god of the dance that shakes the land of Thebes, now lead the way. That's pretty fun.
Pretty great, right? I mean, you can sort of imagine them coming in this probably like a very stately, dance as they're chanting this. Yeah, so we've got the chorus, which is composed of the old citizens of the city of Thebes, enters the stage, celebrating the city's deliverance from the Argive army. They sing about Zeus's role in the victory, the defeat of Polynices' forces, and the key line here is, Zeus hates with a vengeance all bravado, all the mighty boasts of men.
See, I didn't think I had anything in common with Zeus, but it turns out I do.
You also hate bravado, especially in people from Texas for some reason. I don't know.
I love people from Texas.
Oh man, yeah, we were talking about this before the show, just how insufferable Texans are, and then I pointed out, it's like, okay, but you think Texans are bad? Have you ever met anyone from Maryland? Like, these people will not stop about the crabs or the lobsters or whatever it is. Like, I don't even know. Is lobsters Maine? It doesn't matter, because Marylanders think that they invented civilization. That
friend of the show, Dr. Cyril Jenkins, is from Baltimore.
Yep.
Bomber, as they call it.
I don't know if Baltimore counts as the rest of Maryland or not. Actually, I'm not sure. I'll have to go ask.
I mean, they do have all those crabs and such.
Yeah, I'll have to go. Yeah, they do have all those crabs and such. That's true. Yeah. All right, so I'll have to go ask the Knights of Columbus about that one. Where is Baltimore part of the rest of Maryland? All the Marylander people I know are like also Knights of Columbus and have big mustaches for some reason. So anyway, I mean, I realize I just made them sound cool, but trust me, they're insufferable. So. Yeah, so Zeus hates with a vengeance all bravado, all the mighty boasts of men, right? And so the chorus has actually set the tone for the play. And the thing that will happen over the course of Antigone is that the chorus initially is on the side of Creon against Antigone. So they will say all these things that seem like they're, against Antigone, but it's actually an own against Creon. Something has happened in the scene, so it's ironic. And then at the end of the play, Antigone sort of wins the chorus over. So this sets the tone for the play, like I said, somewhat ironically, because it will contrast the bravado of men, that is Creon's, against the will of the gods, and against the patient determination, in this case, of a woman, Antigone.
Yeah.
All right, so we need to make a judgment call here. We have not gotten to the first scene of the play yet. We are 90 minutes in, but I feel like all the intro stuff is past, so we could actually stop right now and then just really get into the play next time, or we could go a little bit into scene one. What do you want to do, Father?
I think we should at least do scene one.
All right, let's do scene one.
I think we should at least do scene one, and then like I said, this will be a two-parter, which I think is great. I think it's a good way to finish up Sophocles and really try to give him his due.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we can take as long as we want to with these things, as long as you guys are willing to watch, I'm willing to talk. So, Marylanders don't shut up about their flag. That's right, Sam Cooke.
I mean, it is a cool flag.
It is a cool flag.
But I should say that the flag of the state in which I was born is the only state flag that has a guy stepping on another guy. So
I mean, that's pretty rad.
Sic semper tyrannis and all that.
Yeah. Who said that famously? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, okay, so
some guy from Virginia.
Some guy from Virginia.
An actor, as it would, no less.
An actor from Virginia.
Yes.
Ooh, boy. All right.
Actually, it turns out he's quoting.
Yes.
They're not quoting him on the flag.
Yes. All right, so Creon enters. My countrymen, the ship of state is safe. The gods who rocked her after a long merciless pounding in the storm have righted her once more. Out of the whole city, I have called you here alone. Well, I know first your undeviating respect for the throne and royal power of King Laius. Next, while Oedipus steered the land of Thebes, and even after he died, your loyalty was unshakable. You still stood by their children. Now then, since the two sons are dead, 2 blows of fate in the same day, cut down by each other's hands, both killers, both brothers stained with blood. As I am next in kin to the dead, I now possess the throne and all its powers. Of course, you cannot know a man completely, his character, his principles, sense of judgment, not till he's shown his colors. Ruling the people, making laws. By the way, another deeply, deeply ironic line, because the whole point of the play is that over the course of it, Creon shows his colors. He seems like this great guy who's come to restore order, but it actually results in everything falling apart.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this about Creon, like, over the last 2 plays, now obviously we don't like it in Oedipus at Colonus where he comes and is trying to grab everybody, but you could still interpret him as trying to do what's best for his city.
Oh yeah.
At that point, like, just, look, come home. This is where you belong.
Creon does not have his heel turn until this play.
Yeah. This is where now he's really in charge. So
yeah. As he says, experience, there's the test. As I see it, whoever assumes the task, the awesome task of setting the city's course, and refuses to adopt the soundest policies, but fearing someone keeps his lips locked tight, he's utterly worthless. So I rate him now. I always have. I'm really sorry, I'm not trying to make a political statement here, but I wish I could do a good Trump impression. Because this would be real fun to do with a Trump impression. And not a political statement. It's just, I think that would be fun.
It would be funny.
Yeah. And whoever places a friend above the good of his own country, he is nothing. I have no use for him. Closely akin to them, skips a little bit, closely akin to them, I proclaim just now the following decree to our people concerning the 2 sons of Oedipus. Eteocles, who died fighting for Thebes, excelling in all arms, he shall be buried, crowned with the hero's honors. The cups we pour to soak the earth and reach the famous dead. Others are going to pour out drink offerings for him.
Yeah.
Even in ancient Bronze Age Thebes, they did in fact pour one out for the homies. Well, not all of the homies.
I mean, and they also would pour out, sacrificial blood and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't say just pouring one out for the homies. Pour out a blood.
Yeah.
But as for his blood brother, Polynices, who returned from exile home to his father's city, and the gods of his race consumed with one desire to burn them roof to roots, who thirsted to drink his kinsman's blood and sell the rest to slavery, that man, a proclamation has forbidden the city to dignify him with a burial, mourn him at all. No, he must be left unburied, his corpse carrion for the birds and dogs to tear, an obscenity for all the citizens to behold. These are my principles. Never at my hands will this traitor be honored above the patriot. But whoever proves his loyalty to the state, I'll prize that man in death as well as in life. So, one of the things that Creon is doing in his little proclamation, Thebes is so great, is he's saying the state, the police, is above the bonds of family. So that is the paradigm that he's setting up, is that the state is the most important thing, and that is your loyalty to the state, which should trump your loyalty to friends or family. So he says, whoever places a friend above the good of his own country, he's nothing. So,
yeah, I mean, one thing that's notable in this speech he does not mention is that neither with the brother he's honoring or the one he's dishonoring, is that both of these young men are his nephews. And also, it turns out, his great nephews.
Right.
Just weirdly enough,
Right.
Like they are blood family to him through Jocasta, his sister.
That's a good point I'm glad you mentioned that. Because he's actually the person who should be taking this responsibility, because he's now the patriarch of the family.
Yeah, these are his sister's sons.
It's actually his job to make sure that the burial takes place properly. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but I suspect, like, there's, like, you could ask, okay, so why is he not being the uncle here?
Yeah.
All right. I think that on the one hand, right, he's putting the state first. That's there's a logic there to it, right? Which is, honor the ones that are loyal, dishonor those who are disloyal.
Yep.
But also probably there's some. I'm psychologizing Creon a little bit here, but whatever.
I mean, it is a very psychological play. Like it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In this case, it's maybe warranted. Yeah.
So, but another one of his motivations might well be he doesn't. Okay, the one child of incest is dead. I don't want anything at all to do with this curse. That is upon these people. So I don't know. I think that might be some element of it too. Like, yes, sure, Eteocles is also the son of incest, but at least he's loyal. At least he's a good guy. From his point of view. So I think that that's probably mixed in here as well. There's a certain amount of like, get them away from me kind of thing. And he has no problem. He has no problem with, like, this is. A little bit of spoilers here, but as we know, of course, he's going to be against Antigone, but he even treats Ismene bad.
Yeah.
Like what is up with that? She's actually being obedient to him.
By the way, I've always kind of felt like Antigone and Ismene have a sort of Elizabeth and Jane Bennett kind of a situation going on. Like,
yeah. Creon does not come out looking good in
not so much. Yeah. And
I think we should do, by the way, in terms of where we should stop, I think we should end not at the end of scene 1 here, but at the end of this part before we get to the Stasimon. I think that's I think we should pick up there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the thing I just want to point out also, by the way, is that there are some scholars who think that this little oration from Creon at the beginning of the play is maybe in some way connected to or even inspired by Pericles' famous funeral oration, which is a classic kind of like text on the importance of patriotism to a democracy. It is the sort of thing, if you had a different sort of education than most people have gotten the last 100 years in this country, you would have been made to memorize as a youngster. You can just look that up if people are curious. It's a very famous speech. And so here, the idea is that Polynices, because he's a traitor, because he fought against the police, that severs, that breaks all the bonds of family that should be considered. So at this point, we come to one of the classic examples of please don't shoot the messenger. So a sentry comes running in, and just after he's made this big old speech about anybody who buries Polynices' body, here's all the terrible things that are going to happen to him.
Yeah.
A sentry comes running in, out of breath and more than a little afraid to speak to Creon. So why don't you take the role of sentry, Father?
Okay. All right.
So,
Creon has a
come to the point. What's wrong? Why so afraid?
First, myself, I've got to tell you, I didn't do it. Didn't see who did. Be fair. Don't take it out on me.
You're playing it safe, soldier, barricading yourself from any trouble. It's obvious you've something strange to tell.
Dangerous too, and danger makes you delay for all you're worth.
Out with it then, and then dismiss.
All right, here it comes. The body. Someone's just buried it, then run off. Sprinkled some dry dust on the flesh, given it proper rites.
What man alive would dare?
I've no idea, I swear it. There was no mark of a spade, no pickaxe there, no earth turned up, the ground packed hard and dry, unbroken, no tracks, no wheel ruts, nothing. The workmen left no trace. Just at sunup, the first watch of the day points it out. It was a wonder. We were stunned. A terrific burden, too, for all of us. Listen, you can't see the corpse, not that it's buried, really. Just a light cover of road dust on it, as if someone meant to lay the dead to rest and keep from getting cursed. Not a sign in sight that dogs or wild beasts had worried the body, even torn the skin. But what came next? Rough talk flew thick and fast. Guard, grilling guard, we'd have come to blows at last. Nothing to stop it. Each man for himself and each the culprit. No one caught red-handed. All of us pleading ignorance, dodging the charges, ready to take up red-hot iron in our fists, go through fire, swear oaths to the gods. I didn't do it. I had no hand in it either. Not in the plotting, not the work itself. Finally, after all this wrangling came to nothing, one man spoke out and made us stare at the ground, hanging our heads in fear. No way to counter him, no way to take his advice and come through safe and sound. Here's what he said. Look, we've got to report the facts to Creon. We can't keep this hidden. Well, that won out, and the lot fell to me, condemned me, unlucky as ever. I got the prize, so here I am against my will, and yours too, well I know. No one wants the man who brings bad news.
So at this point, there's a leader, a third person on the stage. Sorry, he's the leader of the chorus, rather. He says,
"Yeah, I'll say him so that you can get the Creon."
Do him you got to do like an old man voice.
Okay. My king, ever since he began, I've been debating in my mind.
This is cooler than I meant it to be.
Could this possibly be the work of the gods?
Stop! Before you make me choke with anger, the gods? You are senile. Must you also be insane? You say, why, it's intolerable. Say that the gods could have the slightest concern for that corpse? Tell me, was it for meritorious service they proceeded to bury him, prized him so? The hero who came to burn their temples ringed with pillars, their golden treasures, scorch their hallowed earth, and fling their laws to the winds? Exactly when did you last see the gods celebrating traitors? Inconceivable. Oh, now I know who plays Creon.
Oh, is it Wallace Shawn?
Yes, 100%. Inconceivable. No, from the first, there were certain citizens. No, I'm not going to be able to keep that up.
He doesn't have a lisp. Come on.
He has a little bit of a lisp.
I guess maybe when he's playing the Grand Negus.
Yeah.
Unemployed in Greenland.
Okay, yeah, that's it. That's canon, folks. We figured it out. All right. He does play the Grand Negus. I just love that. I love this line so much. All right. No, from the first, there were certain citizens who could hardly stand the spirit of my regime, grumbling against me in the dark, heads together, tossing wildly, meeting in coffee shops. Oh, wait, sorry. Never keeping their necks beneath the yoke, loyally submitting to their king. These are the instigators. I'm convinced they perverted my own guard. Bribed them to do their work. Money. Nothing worse in our lives, so current, rampant, so corrupting. Money. You demolish cities, root men from their homes. You train and twist good minds and set them to do the most atrocious schemes. No limit, you make them adept at every kind of outrage, every godless crime. Money. Everyone. The whole crew bribed to commit this crime. They've made one thing sure, at least. Sooner or later, they will pay the price. You! I swear to Zeus, as I still believe in Zeus, that if you don't find the man who buried that corpse, the very man, and produce him before my eyes, simple death won't be enough for you, not till we string you up alive and wring the immortality out of you. I'm going to say
That's
that
quite
to
the
my
threat.
kids. I will string you up alive and wring the immortality out of you. I guess that's the same as saying you're going to beat the living daylights out of somebody, actually. Now that you think about it. Then you can steal the rest of your days, better informed about where to make a killing. You'll have learned at last it doesn't pay to itch for rewards at every hand that beckons. Filthy profits wreck most men. You'll see they'll never save your life.
Please, may I say a word or two? Or just turn and go?
Can't you tell? Everything you say offends me.
Where does it hurt you? In the ears or in the heart?
There's a lot of backsass in this play, by the way.
Yeah.
A lot more than the other two.
Yes.
That's why I included so much of the dialogue, because a lot of it's like a little catty.
Yeah.
And who are you to pinpoint my displeasure?
The culprit grates on your feelings. I just annoy your ears.
Are you still talking? You talk too much. A born nuisance?
Maybe so, but I never did this thing, so help me.
Yes, you did. What's more, you squandered your life for silver.
Oh, it's terrible when the one who does the judging judges things all wrong. That's a money quote right there.
Yeah, right? Well, now, you just be clever about your judgments. If you fail to produce the criminals for me, you'll swear your dirty money brought you pain.
So then he leaves, right?
Yeah. Then Creon turns sharply, re-entering the palace.
Yeah. I hope he's found. Best thing by far, but caught or not, that's in the lap of fortune. I'll never come back. You've seen the last of me. I'm saved even now, and I never thought, I never hoped. Dear gods, I owe you all my thanks.
Like I said, it's a classic don't shoot the messenger situation.
Exit shoot by a bear. No.
Yeah. So the thing I want to point out here is that the leader of the chorus, his little suspicion here, wondering if this was the work of the gods. Obviously no, but also yes, because Antigone is literally doing the work of the gods by seeing to the funeral rites. So
yeah, exactly.
All right. Shall we go very quickly to the chat? See what people are up to shenanigans-wise, and then we'll pick up with the end of scene 1 in our next episode, which will not be until August, which gives all of you plenty of time to read the play, also plenty of time for you to go and listen to the really excellent audio production on Audible that I mentioned last time. It has Haley Atwell as Antigone, which I think is really great casting, actually. I would love to see her just in the play. But anyway, she does the lines with a great deal of force. It's quite wonderful. So anyway, let's check in with the chat.
Yeah. I noted several people really they caught that we were referencing John Wilkes Booth earlier.
Yes.
I have to say, by the way, so one of my favorite
you be a little careful here. People are still prickly about the recent unpleasantness.
I have to say that one of my favorite productions is features John Wilkes Booth as one of the major characters. And that is a show by Stephen Sondheim called Assassins. And Assassins is a show about the various people who have successfully or attempted to kill a president of the United States. And so the big first assassination in the play is John Wilkes Booth, of course. And, he's, of course, he said things like, he was a bloody tyrant and I brought him down. And there's one of the big first kind of moment in the play, there's a lot of gunshots that ring out during this show. But the first one that rings out, when that happens, you hear John Wilkes Booth, who in the original production is played by Victor Garber, who's just masterful at being John Wilkes Booth. He shouts out "Sic Semper Tyrannis," And
by the way, I have pictures of myself holding both the key to Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln's box at Ford Theater, and also the shirt collar, which Lincoln was wearing, which still has some of his blood on it the night that he was assassinated.
Yeah, but other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
I was going to make that joke. Gosh darn it. I had that one in the chamber.
The rules of dialogue require that I say
was
it
just
after you said that.
For you to finish explaining Assassins, and then I was going to be like, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Like, I had it all queued up.
Gosh, okay. It's a remarkable piece of theater, and a remarkable exploration of human psychology. I think, like, why do people kill presidents? It originally came out in the 1990s during Operation Desert Storm. Actually,
I was going to say, is the answer the CIA?
It bombed. It bombed. It really bombed when it first came out, and I think that's because we were at war, and so the country was not really in the mood to do a show about killing presidents.
They threw a shoe at George W.
Yeah, but
I remember. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah. But then later on, it got brought back. First, it was off Broadway, and then it got brought back and was much more successful with another cast and so forth. But I don't know. I think that there's something kind of Greek tragic about that show.
Yeah, of course.
Because Because it's an exploration of why people do awful things. And obviously it's a very, very modern explanation. In that case, most of the people, most of the assassins in the play are clearly mentally ill on one level or another. The one who really isn't is John Wilkes Booth. He's the guy who's doing it kind of out of principle, revenge, whereas everyone else, it's a bit insane on some level. He's the one who's kind of sane. I'm not saying it was a good thing for him to do, but he's the one that, it's like I said, he says he was a dirty tyrant. We brought him down, right? He saw himself as this noble figure doing what was necessary. The pious,
which is why he's quoting which is why he's quoting Brutus.
Exactly. So it's an interesting moment because it's a classicist. Like it's several layers of meta, of classicism, right?
By the way, fun bit of presidential assassination trivia.
Ooh, I'm here for it.
The daughter of Lee Harvey Oswald was baptized in my parish hall.
Oh, sure, right.
Where I sit and have coffee after Divine Liturgy every Sunday. So this baptism happened after this.
Wasn't it by Archbishop Dimitri?
By Archbishop Dimitri.
Yeah.
When he was father, when he was the priest at the parish. And it happened after the assassination. His wife wanted to have, after he was kind of out of the picture.
She was Russian, wasn't she? The wife was Russian.
Yeah. So she wanted to have her daughter baptized.
Yeah, I've seen photos of this, actually.
Yeah, it was a famous picture because it actually caused a whole sort of like the FBI conducted an investigation into our parish, and that you can find the transcripts of the interviewing agents and Archbishop Dimitri. So it's like a kind of a famous bit of American Dallas history.
Yeah.
By the way, next time you're in Dallas, I will take you to the 6th floor museum, which is actually great. They turned the 6th floor into a museum kind of around the JFK assassination. Anyway, it's actually quite great.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't come into this script intending to talk about this play, but a musical, actually, Assassins. But I think it's you mentioned Lee Harvey Oswald, and the climax of the play is that Lee Harvey Oswald has this vision as he's considering whether to kill JFK or not. And the vision is that all the assassins, past and future, in front of him, they appear to him. And they're all encouraging him to do it, right? But then the one who really comes and is sort of like the mentor figure, and the one who's making this argument to him and encouraging him and all this kind of stuff, this weirdly fatherly experience, is John Wilkes Booth. And at one point he even says, he's like, why is it that all these people have 3 names,
It's
John Wilkes Booth. And then at the end, he goes, Lee Harvey Oswald. So yeah, it's weird, but there's a certain kind of Greek poetic character to this show. And it relates to this that we're looking at now, to Antigone, because what does it do is it's the same flip. It's the sense of, I have a duty that goes beyond the state, and the state is going to have to pay. And it's not like Antigone, of course, who's like, I will risk my life, I will give up my life in order to thwart the state because I have a duty. It's I'm going to kill because I have this duty against the state. The state is conflicting with my sense of right and wrong. And in the case of John Wilkes Booth, he says, this man destroyed my country. He did all these things, which, I mean, whatever you want to say about the Civil War, he was right about that. Like, there's all kinds of awful things that happened to the South as a result of the Civil War. I'm by no means am I excusing what happened. By no means. Slavery was a horrible, evil thing, and it had to be brought down. But then you get all these other assassins, like, for instance, Charles J. Guiteau, the guy who kills Garfield. He he believes that the system is rigged and that he should be president of the United States. And so if he kills Garfield, then he's going to get attention, his book sales will go up, and then he'll get elected president. Obviously, he's insane. Or Leon Czolgosz, who was an immigrant who came to the United States, and the great promise of prosperity and the good life and whatever, and he didn't get that. And so he's like, I have to do something about this. This whole system is unjust. And so at the big Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, everybody's lining up. You can get in line and shake the hand of William McKinley, the president of the United States. And so Leon Czolgosz, he's like, I'm going to get in line. And he gets in line. He has a gun, and he's got a handkerchief wrapped around the gun. He's just holding it in his hand. And he walks up. He's next in line to meet McKinley. And he just puts the gun wrapped with a handkerchief and just shoots him right there in front of everybody. So it's these awful deeds kind of in defiance of the state. But it's all based on different people had this idea that this is the right thing to do, I mean,
one of my operating assumptions in life is that everybody always thinks that the thing they're doing is the best and the most right thing to do, and that's almost always the case. Like people are always reasonable by the rules that they have decided to live by.
Yeah,
I suppose there are exceptions to this, but most of the time this is the case.
Well, and I mean, even the craziest ones, like Giuseppe Zangara, who you can tell I learned a lot about presidential assassinations from this show.
Yeah, this is
Giuseppe Zangara.
That you know about this, Father Andrew.
Father
Andrew Stephen. Damn it! Wait,
who kills
3 names?
Who tries to kill FDR, but ends up killing Mayor Anton Cermak of Chicago. FDR was just the president-elect at the time. The reason that Zangara did that is because his stomach hurt. And he believed that it was the fault of the president of the United States. And even though FDR wasn't president yet, he was president-elect. He figured it's just as good. And this is one of the things that's so weird about this show, but I don't know, kind of weirdly charming in a way, in a dark way. It's Stephen Sondheim. There's a lot of dark stuff in Sondheim. Is the big song that Zangara sings, the last high note that he's singing out is his scream as he's being electrocuted on the electric chair. Oh, and then you hear after that. I mean, it's deeply weird. Deeply weird.
This episode has gotten real weird.
I know this seems like a digression, but
no,
but really, I think, like the thing, in talking about theater, I think one of the things that it can do is it has this cathartic, deeply cathartic character, which is, I think, what tragedy is for, especially, where you can take something very dark and put it on stage and let's consider this for the next hour and a half or so.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's actually all relatively pretty relevant. This is not so much a rabbit trail, some of our digressions.
It's funny. I have to say, though, it's funny to me. I know we're at over 2 hours now, but it's funny to me of all the podcasts that I've done now for a lot of years, the one area of my life that I never particularly thought that I would talk about on them is frankly what I did before I went to seminary. I have a lot of experience of doing live theater, live music, all this kind of stuff. I mean, for 10 years I did this professionally, and then for years and years before that, that's what I wanted to do with my life, was to be in theater. Yeah. And so, I was the kid that I had, the soundtrack to Les Miserables in 8 different languages because I was trying to collect them all. I could sing Empty Chairs and Empty Tables that Marius sings in Les Miserables in German, in addition to English as well.
So this is where we learn that Father Andrew is actually a theater kid all along.
Diesen Schmerz kennt keinen Namen.
Oh my God.
Anyway.
All right, guys. I'm really sorry about this, everyone. Somehow I have to be the straight man and bring things back on focus.
I know. Usually I'm
never a good
dealing
sign.
With some other weirdo.
Never a good sign. Yeah, you're usually the straight man with all your weird friends.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So going through the actual chats here. All right. So by the way, I have to make a small correction. Savannah says many of the original American folktales or myths are basically superheroes like Daniel Boone or that guy with a blue bowl. It's an ox, not a bull.
Oh, close enough.
Whatever. No, not close. There's a important anatomical difference between an ox and a bull. Just ask any ox. Ask any ox.
Yes.
But the guy with the blue bull, whatever his name is, I can't remember. So that's Paul Bunyan.
Paul Bunyan, yeah. Yes.
But also, Daniel Boone is a historical person.
Yeah.
I just have to point out, he's a person. We have his diary. Like, he's that kind of, like, he's a historical individual.
And he still lived not too far from here, actually.
Yeah. Well, he lived a little farther from here than from here, but yes. And Daniel Boone. So I'm bringing this up because as a young person, being a super cool kid who was very popular with other children, I was really into Daniel Boone stories and just like frontiersman stuff in general. So like I read his diary, I read like several biographies of him. Some things you should know about Daniel Boone. First of all, he was a Quaker, and therefore he was a pacifist. He was also not a big man, as the song says. Although I love that show where he's played by Fess Parker. Daniel Boone was a man. He was a big man, and he fought for America to keep all Americans free. Okay, that did not actually happen. He was a Quaker. He never wore a coonskin cap. He wore like a Quaker hat. He was probably about 5'2", 5'3".
Wow.
And he probably only killed like 2 Indians in his entire life. Like, he was a pacifist. There's a recorded instance of he got in a fight with some people and he shot at them in self-defense, and maybe one of them fell off like into the water, but we don't really know. But I mean, he was a really important, interesting person for all that. But yes, there's the man, then there's the myth, right? And the myth is Daniel Boone, like as basically Davy Crockett. By the way, Davy Crockett was a big man, did wear a coonskin cap, killed a lot of people. Fess Parker played both of them and basically played the same character.
Didn't Billy Bob Thornton also play Davy Crockett in?
Yes, that's correct. That's right.
I don't remember what movie that was.
Was it a movie about the Alamo?
See, this brings us back now full circle.
Yes.
To the conversation we were having earlier about your ancestor named Bill Thornton. Not Billy Bob Thornton. But apparently you are related to a lot of Billy Bob Thorntons.
Lots of Billy Bob Thorntons are related to me. That's right. All right, so let's do a bit of back to the chat here. Again, God having the unique property of being unsubscribed. Really like that. Going to steal.
Paul Kelly mentions that his high school staged the play as if it was in Germany in 1937. This is actually
something. So this is a thing. It's a very famous staging of this play. I can't remember who did it now, but who initially did it, and a lot of people have done it since. I mean, there's definitely a commentary in the play about the laws of God versus the laws of men in the ancient way. The way that it's sometimes spun in the modern world is as Creon sort of, I made a joke about how he would have done really well in like a Banana Republic. It's because I'm listening to a book right now on the history of the Cold War, and it has there's several chapters in it about these sort of like these different petty dictators that the United States would basically set up in these different Banana Republics in Central America, and that the dictators themselves were really, really awful. Like people, I mean, they tortured, they murdered, these are not good people. They committed all kinds of atrocities, human rights violations, whatever you want to call them. But basically because they were willing to say, we'll keep the Soviets out, then, our America propped them up. And Creon kind of comes across as like one of these guys. Like you can see him at the head of like a military junta or something like that. And so that's very much the way that in the 20th and 21st century, that's very much the way that the play has been often staged, because he does kind of devolve into this tyrant.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think
a lot of chat about John Wilkes Booth. Brutus in the chat. You guys know way too much about this. But I mean, it's quite lots of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we didn't get super far into the play, but I think that we did a lot that has helpfully contextualized it.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue on. I mean, it'll be the first week of August for our next episode. So just hang on, everybody.
Hang in there.
As Deacon Seraphim said, go read it. It's not long. It takes you 45 minutes, an hour to read it, maybe. And we'll dive into 7 against Thebes in the subsequent episode.
Yeah, the subsequent episode.
So
the summer will continue to be hot.
Exactly.
It will continue to be Theban.
And probably, if we may even go into September, and then it'll be a hot Theban Indian summer, as they say. Although in Texas, it's summer until November, I guess? Or
Texas seasons are we're having actually a pretty mild summer here this year.
Only in the high 90s?
Yeah, low 90s, actually. It's not even summer. It's I know. Put
Get
on
your sweaters on
already.
Kid.
Yeah. But Texas summer really goes into September. And then October is kind of schizophrenic, where it'll switch back and forth all throughout October between fall days, summer days, fall days, summer days, and then November is when fall properly starts. So thanks. Thank you
very much for tuning in today to begin meditating on one of the most heartbreaking tales in the ancient world. If you were edified by this conversation, make sure you like, subscribe, share, review, click all the buttons. Our main home is on YouTube, but we are also, of course, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you click that little bell below when you subscribe so that you'll get notified every time we put out the new episode. It'll also help the YouTube algorithms direct our stuff to more people's eyeballs. We put out a new episode twice a month, and for our next episode, we'll be doing more of this. We will be continuing our close read of Antigone, maybe or maybe not with the weird energy which we have had this evening, but we will be doing it one way or the other.
Farewell, friends, and may you always trace the silhouette of virtue in everything that you read.
This has been a listener and viewer-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.